Monday, May 25th, Pastor Ron Jetter, Immanuel Lutheran Church, Grandview, Washington, with my daily message for this Memorial Day 2020. Many years ago, after we had first moved up here from the Southwest, I was serving in a nearby church, as you know, many of you, and on Memorial Day, about 6 months after I had begun, we decided we would take the Sunday school, actually Memorial weekend, Sunday rather, take the Sunday school on a field trip to the Outlook Cemetery. It's located about 3 miles to the west of the end of the hill in Sunnyside, the western end of Sunnyside where we lived, where our church was. And we took with us buckets and sponges and brooms and flowers. The cemetery had still been active. There were still active burials happening at the Outlook Cemetery. A perpetual fund had been established for the care, but no one had been hired to actually do the work. And we went out there. Our Sunday school, we had a Boy Scout troop. We had started a Girl Scout troop, so we made this an annual tradition, and we would take along all the kids from little small ones. Mine were 4 and 6 when we moved here, and all the way on up to high schoolers and some young adults, and some parents had come along. We'd have quite an entourage out there. It was overgrown, untended, weeds, so we took along lawn clippers. We took along hoses so that we could water things down as well. And it really made quite a difference, and it made a story in the newspaper long, long ago, and some people started taking notice, especially families whose loved ones were buried there, including veterans who had fought in World War I, World War II, Korea, and even Vietnam. And somehow a group decided that they were going to reactivate a board of directors and to use that perpetual fund, use the money for the care of the place. They put in a new watering system, so that about the third Memorial Day Sunday, Memorial Weekend Sunday that we went there, back in the mid-90s then, there was water available for us. We didn't have to take our own water jugs along. There were even hoses there that we could use, and we scrubbed graves and decorated them. It taught these kids that where we lay our loved ones to rest is a place of honor, a place of dignity, a place to be respected. Vandalism was regular at the Outlook Cemetery. Headstones knocked over, cars driving across graves. A fence was put up and a gate, even though people could open the gate and drive in if they wanted. Nonetheless, it kept people from simply taking the corner, cutting off the corner on Gap Road in Outlook, across the remaining, the resting place of people's loved ones. And it started looking nice. The trees were trimmed. We painted a shed, and within 2 years they had taken that shed down and put up a brand new one. So our work inspired others, but it taught all the kids a lesson I hope they remember for the rest of their lives. I know mine do. I'm not out decorating graves on this Memorial Day. If I was in Idaho with my parents, which I had done a number of times, I would go to the cemetery in Kuna, where my mother's parents were buried, where her 2 younger brothers were also buried. They had died before even really growing up, one as a baby and one before he became a teenager. And so my grandparents were left with a son who never married and 5 daughters who gave them some 16 grandchildren, of which I am number 16. Always been proud of that fact. I'm the baby of the whole clan on both sides of the family. But going out there, my Aunt Vera would come out and my cousin Linda, because they lived in the town of Nampa and we lived in Boise. And so I'd pick up my parents and we'd drive out to the cemetery in Kuna, where my mom grew up, where she was born, along with all of her siblings, where my grandfather had landed after coming over from Germany and earning enough money to homestead there in Cuna, and we would pay our respects to them. In the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, we often find the phrase, and the king lived so many years and reigned, and then it will have one of two phrases. For instance, King Josiah. King Josiah did what was pleasing in the sight of the Lord, and he slept with his fathers, meaning he was honored with a burial in the family royal burial grounds, so that as people would honor the names of the great kings, including the kings of his own lineage, King David, King Solomon, and all the others that were his personal ancestors, he was buried with them, sleeping with his fathers, meaning holy ground, remembered, beloved. His grave was a place to be honored on days like today. But then some kings, Manasseh, there would be this other phrase, and he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And then he did not sleep with his fathers. They would then take evil kings, and sometimes if they had been buried in the family ground, they would unearth their bones and remove them to an unmarked place. Because the way to take immortality away from someone at that time, 2,800 years ago in Israel, was to remove their name, to disconnect it from their family, their body, their grave, unknown. Nobody would visit it, and nobody would say the name. Isn't that what we do when we go to graves on days like today? Or even to memorials, if you've ever been to the memorials in Washington, D.C., to touch the name, to read it in your mind, or maybe speak it out loud. Give that name honor. Bring it alive again. That's how memories live. That's what they believed kept them immortal. We believe in eternal life through Jesus Christ, so it's different for us. But we still understand the need to honor the burial places. It's important to have a place. One of the things that I have taught for many years is what is grief. I have my certification as a grief support specialist, and understand that a place or a ritual is a way of keeping a person alive. The hardest thing at first when we lose someone very close to us is coming to terms with the reality and the finality of that death. And oftentimes it helps then to have a place or a ritual. Sometimes it may be creating a shrine in our own home. It may be going to the grave and talking to the person, and it may take months or even a year or two of not having daily visits, of gradually stretching those out before we know that we've relocated that person into a sacred place in our hearts and our minds and in our memories. But even then, days like today, Memorial Day, exist so that we can reenact that ritual that allowed us to properly grieve in healthy ways when we first lost our loved one. After my parents died, because their deaths were only 17 days apart, my brother and sister and our spouses and my cousin gathered at our family cabin. That's where my parents wanted their ashes scattered. We were able to combine their ashes, and it was Easter weekend 6 years ago. In fact, tomorrow would have been my dad's 95th birthday. So I'm remembering him with fondness and a little bit of sadness. We scattered their ashes about 10 feet below the lower deck of the cabin, about 15, 20 feet above the middle fork of the Payette River. They would sit on the deck and watch that river. The picture over here, there's the Payette River. Somebody painted that. That's the view from the deck of the cabin. And right there in the foreground, right by this tree, that's where we scattered their ashes. So twice a year, my brother and I, and sometimes my sister, come up there with our spouses, and we'll always take a moment when we go walk along all the property. We'll go down to that place and we'll talk to them. We'll say hi. Ask them how they're doing. Don't expect an answer. We simply look around and know that they'd be pleased that we're still keeping their treasure, their beloved cabin, in good shape, and that we're using it to strengthen our own bond as a family, and that we're remembering their name. Whether you have been to a place physically today or only in your mind or in your memories, however it is you honor the beloved dead, God bless you on this Memorial Day. And peace be with you.